do a quick lesson on vibrato for classical guitar. You've all seen vibrato before. Or I was playing that Mertz piece the other day, and I was playing the melody alone. People were commenting, I got a couple emails asking for a vibrato lesson because they saw me doing it and I didn't address it in the video. So just as a quick overview, what we're going to do in the video is I'll demonstrate just a little bit of vibrato so you see it and do a close-up with the camera. And then we'll talk about vibrato as a musical element for expression. So whether we can think of it as an ornament or just a normal way of playing. We'll talk about when to play it. In terms of like listening to music and knowing what eras you might want to use vibrato in and what styles of music you might want to use it in, and also not overusing it. We'll also talk about it, how to play vibrato, and we'll talk about using it to make the left hand relax. Some teachers use vibrato to get the students to relax their left hands because you have to be a little bit relaxed to do that. And then we'll just talk about some tuning and intonation issues at the end. So couple of different sections to the video. Maybe as a first intro, let's just play some vibrato. So we can take our finger and play a note, and then we'll go back and forth on our finger. Not up and down, don't bend the string up and down, but we'll just go back and forth. Then we'll play another note, and we'll roll back and forth on our finger. So it's kind of like back and forth. And you have to be really relaxed in the left hand. You're almost like jiggling this finger in its joint. You're so relaxed, but you're curved, so you have enough tension to play. But this is so relaxed here that it can just wiggle around, right? So you can't be clenching. And we'll just do a little close-up of that. So when you play vibrato, you want to make sure that you're going back and forth on the finger. Not pulling the string or bending the string, not trying to go up and down like that, but back and forth on the fingertip. It's kind of like a back and forth across the top of the finger. Of course, you need good technique, so you need curved fingers on your fingertips. Do some different angles. And you can see how you have to be a little bit relaxed because like, it's kind of like I'm moving I have my finger curved, but it's almost loose in the joint there, right? So when you play vibrato, practice the rate at which your vibrato goes. So for example, here's a slow vibrato. You can hear pretty slow, right? Compared to a fast vibrato. Just like a bumblebee, right? It's like so we could even time this out, right? We could go 1 and 2. And That's a slow one. We could go 1 E and a 2 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a... And then we could go into much faster rhythms. 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and... So you might want to practice just being able to play vibrato at different speeds with each finger. It's a skill. It's like a technical skill you need to be able to do. In early music, vibrato was considered an ornament, at least on plucked instruments. So for example, in the music of Gaspar Sands, he actually has a symbol for vibrato. And maybe it was almost not considered like your normal vibrato. Maybe it was like an intense vibrato, almost like a trill, because when you do vibrato, it kind of modulates the sound, right? The pitch. So it actually kind of changes the pitch a little bit. And so maybe his ornamentation in vibrato was like pretty intense or something like that. But you can consider it not just how we play, but actually an expressive element that you can use to your advantage to be expressive in pieces. Now, if you listen to voice, you'll notice some differences, like differences in the ways they use vibrato, particularly in early music, so like the Renaissance and Baroque period, compared to maybe how they do it in Romantic era opera or something like that. The way they use vibrato can be quite different. There's lots of early music where very little vibrato is used, or maybe it's used, they like sprinkle a little bit of vibrato at the end of a pure note, for example. That's a generalization, though. Later on, you might hear some types of music where there's lots of vibratos, just like laid on really thick. And I think that's true of guitar music as well. Like when you listen to Tarrega and stuff like that, you know, like you'll hear quite a bit of vibrato. It's just like an expressive effect. Or like, if you're doing some Villalobos or something, you might hear some of that vibrato. But it can be misused, right? There can be too much of it. You know, obviously that's ludicrous, but nevertheless, like it can be abused. You can use too much of it maybe. Use it at the wrong times. When you listen to a sophisticated player, you might hear them use very little. You know, like just at the end, like pure note, pure, a little bit of vibrato at the very end. And it can be this very subtle experience. But it adds kind of a human touch. Like if a robot played guitar and wasn't programmed to do vibrato, it could lack a kind of like human quality, because the voice does a certain amount of vibrato on its own, right? So, and same thing in that romantic Merz piece. Without it, it can sound really nice, but I couldn't even stop myself from doing it there. I want to do it. Especially on these long notes, it's like nice to have some attention given to the note. But in other cases, I might really enjoy hearing just, instead of hearing like, you know, lots of vibrato, I might just want, I added some at the end, didn't I? Sometimes just a pure, beautifully pure, even note can be absolutely wonderful. But other times, a little bit of vibrato is very nice. I like it there on the very last note. It just adds makes the last note a longer and more expressive and seems to elongate the note for me. So, okay, so that's my little discussion about how you can think about it. You know, don't just lay it on without thinking about it. Craft your music and also become historically informed as to what vibrato might mean in that piece that you're playing. One thing I'll say is that some teachers even use vibrato to teach relaxation. So they actually like use it to get a student to loosen up their left hand, because to some extent you have to be pretty relaxed to do vibrato. Like your hand, you need enough curvature in the finger that you can play the note, but then it's like you have to be pretty relaxed and almost like loosen this joint, right? So it's like you have to be super relaxed. So getting a student to play, for example, a scale and maybe end with vibrato might be a way of getting them to like release some of their tension, or doing it on every note. I would also practice like getting used to adding it after the primary note. So you play a note, add some vibrato. Play a note, let it ring pure, then add some vibrato. Pure, vibrato. Pure, vibrato. So, I think that practicing it in these different ways will just train your hand not only how to do it, but it'll also give your mind some information about how you might be able to use it in your pieces. It's kind of tricky, like if a teacher says, add some vibrato, students might say like, well, how, or like where, or how much, like there's so many variables. But the thing is, if you've gone through exercises like this and you've practiced your vibrato, you already will be informed about a whole bunch of stuff. You'll know the result of a bumblebee vibrato. You might be more informed in that way. And then, of course, listen to lots of music and listen to violins and cellos playing music from different time periods and see how much vibrato they use and what the effect is. Quite often when I'm teaching, I'll tell my students, like a cello. Or like like a cello, I'll say, play like a cello. But that kind of reliant on them knowing what a cello sounds like, and maybe adding some vibrato in there because string players are so good at vibrato and they use it to such good effect. One last thing I'll say, so you can listen to lots of different styles of music to be informed. One thing I'll say is that be careful of pushing the string too hard and doing vibrato. It can really put your note out of tune. I had a student playing that Villalobos piece, and they were doing like a kind of too much tension along with their vibrato, and it was really making the note kind of out of tune. So we had to work on just like easing up on how hard we're pushing, and then the tuning got much better. And we also backed off the vibrato a little bit, so we got a little bit more of like adding the vibrato after the initial note, so that as the sustain died away on the guitar, the vibrato would be added in and you wouldn't get too much intonation issues in terms of the tuning.